Hey everyone, I'm Kendrick Diaz, and you're listening to Verse by Verse. Our passage for today comes from a letter written to the Jewish exiles. Around the turn of the 6th century BC, many of the Jews were torn from the only home they had ever known and forced into Babylon. It wasn't some random tragedy. It was the exact judgment God had warned them about through his prophets for decades. Because Judah violated their covenant, God used Babylon as a tool to subjugate his people and deport them from the promised land. Now, I can't pretend to know what it's like to be uprooted from my home and thrust into some foreign place, but I can't imagine how hard it must have been for the Jewish exiles to just accept their new reality and carry on with life. Their home was more than just a piece of land. Israel was the place where the true God dwelled among his people. Israel was where true worship took place. Israel was where virtually every aspect of society was shaped by laws God had given his people. How could they just move forward in Babylon, a place that didn't reflect any of that? So let's spare a thought for the person who had to read this letter to the exiles. Jeremiah 29:5-7, God says this to them: "Build houses and dwell in them. Plant gardens and eat their fruit. Take wives and beget sons and daughters, and take wives for your sons and give your daughters to husbands, so that they may bear sons and daughters, that you may be increased there and not diminished. And seek the peace of the city where I have caused you to be carried away captive, and pray to the Lord for it. For in its peace, you will have peace." In other words, God told them to settle down, adjust to life in Babylon, build homes, get married, start families, live normal lives. And don't forget, pray for Babylon's peace. The regime that had killed their loved ones, stripped their nation of its sovereignty, torn them away from their homeland, and was about to burn Jerusalem to the ground. Yes, that Babylon. Pray for their peace. Wow. That was a surprising mission in front of the exiles. Not to entertain wild ideas of coming back to Jerusalem early, not to stir up a rebellion, not even to pray for Babylon's downfall. They were called to move on with life and to be instruments of peace in their cities. Do you want to know what didn't change for the Jews even in exile? Their identity. They were still the people of God, and their calling was the same charge God had given them all the way back in Exodus, to be a model people. Being God's people was never just about the land they lived in. It was about the way they lived. No matter where they were, they could always lead godly lives and be examples in their communities. That was their broader calling as Israelites. I can't help but see the parallels between the lives of those exiles and ours as Christians. I know we've never lived under a king anointed by God to lead us, or experienced a nation whose morals, ethics, and legal system came directly from God, or had a system of worship tied to the physical existence of a temple in a specific place, only to have it all ripped away. I know all of that. But like the exiles, our calling and identity doesn't depend on our physical circumstances. The reality is that we are God's people in spiritual Babylon. We have been burned by the world without a doubt, and this isn't our permanent home, but God wants us to go on with life, continue to act like his people, and become agents of peace wherever we are. For the Jews, their new circumstances were temporary. They were allowed to return to Jerusalem sometime later. Our circumstances are also temporary. God promises to bring us into his kingdom when Jesus Christ returns, but until then, we have a job to do. Build houses, start families, excel in our careers, seek peace, pray for peace, and set ourselves apart, not by isolating from the world, but by the way we live within it.
Verse by Verse is a Life, Hope, and Truth podcast. Check out the show notes to find more free content, like videos, articles, and booklets in our Learning Center.